welcome with In Talks with Tamsin. Tonight I'm joined with Joe Shafiq. Joe Shafiq has got one of the most interesting and diverse families that I've connected with. She's a fantastic woman, and I couldn't think of a better person to call a friend. Joe is really sort of one of a kind, actually. And one of the things I love about Jo is her kindness and patience. And yeah, just really looking forward to sharing this space with you, Jo, and learning a bit more. And I'm sure the viewers are going to love hearing some of your stories. But essentially, what you're going to talk tonight about is your neurotypical family, neurodiverse family, and your 4 children. So, yeah, welcome, Jo. It's
Thank you.
lovely to have you on. So, yeah, why don't we just have a quick sort of catch up on how your day's been or how your week's been?
So, first of all, hello, and thank you for that lovely introduction. It's very, very kind, very lovely, nice words. It's always nice to hear lovely things about yourself, isn't it? So, thank you for that. I'm also very blessed for your friendship, so thank you very much for being part of
Oh,
my story as well. Yeah, I've had a great week actually. Luca's still on, my youngest, he's still on half term. He starts back to college actually late, 2 weeks time, so he's starting college, so we're preparing for that, and we've been decorating his room, which is where I'm sitting in currently. So he's moved bedroom, so I've been painting and moving rooms for the past week, so that's been quite fun.
oh, lovely. So, um, we're going to talk about your family, your structure, and sort of all the challenges that you face. But before we get into the main subject of neurodivergent, neurotypical, because you've got 4 children, haven't you?
Mhm.
Um, Ambreen, Alannah, Arie, and Luca.
Mhm.
And this sort of balance actually of neurodivergent, neurotypical,
Mhm.
and yeah, so you've got a whole mix in there, haven't you? You've got sort of gender identity, race, sexuality, disability. So that's kind of, well, that's probably about 10 different conversations at a later date. But we're going to
Right.
talk about, or you're going to talk about these in a lot more detail. But can we go right back to the beginning, Joe? So you're a full-on East End Cockney girl.
Yeah.
Take us back to some early memories, and yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I'm a real true Cockney, born within the sound of Bow Bells, which is traditionally the way to distinguish a Cockney. Um, and so yeah, I was born in Mile Hospital, and I've lived all of my life in Tower Hamlets, East London, in Poplar and on the Isle of Dogs, which I currently live, which will, if I want, depends on who I'm speaking to, I'll say Canary Wharf or the Isle of Dogs. So I'm part of the indigenous old islanders, which is what we call ourselves, really, the original people who lived near Canary Wharf. That's where I've come from. Yeah, I've great memories of playing out on the street and playing Tim Tam Tommy and all of those fun games out on the street, being a bit of a street urchin. Lots of amazing, funny characters. Growing up around Chris Street Market and yeah, Savin Puds and sausage and onion rolls and all of the pie and mash and all of those lovely jelly deals, all of those lovely East End grub. Yeah, lots of really fond, lovely memories of the East End. Yeah, which I have.
Oh, lovely.
Um,
So, what era? I won't ask your age or anything like that, but what era were you growing up? Sort of teenage years.
Teenagers or the
What was that
80s.
kind of
Yeah, yeah, behind
80s?
80s.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I was a hip hop and breakdance girl. I was often on my travels up to Covent Garden watching all the break dancers and body poppers.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. I used to have lots of friends who used to dance, and yeah, we used to sneak into the cinema and watch breakdance over and over and over at Mile End ABC, as it was called then.
Oh, next time I see you, Jo, I want to see all the family
Oh yeah, I'll show you my
photos.
moves.
Yeah,
Yeah, my body posture.
definitely. Yeah, and all the pictures. I want to see the evidence.
Yeah, of my cool
Yeah. So we were chatting earlier, and I know this about you anyway, that you met your husband whilst you were a London bus driver,
Mhm,
and before that you were a hairdresser, which was your first job.
mhm.
Um, so just working sort of backwards then. So growing up in the 80s, doing all the sort of typical things that you'd have done back then, and what was your school life like? Was that all quite normal, or was it a good sort of school years?
Um, no, I was a bit of a rebel. I didn't, my educational route has not been a traditional educational route. I used to skip a lot of school once I got to, I was quite, like I say, I just, by 13, 14, I just was bunking off school. 15, I had my first boyfriend, and that was it. I sort of left school behind. I'd sit, smoke out the back, and um, flagrantly, smoking out in at the back of the school and stuff. Just yeah, it was a sort of a up and down time, really. So yeah, not the happiest of times, I'll be
Yeah,
honest. I didn't have any extreme bullying or anything like that. I had some fun, really great fun times. Um, but I didn't. It's a regret. We shouldn't live with regrets. But I didn't get my education in the traditional route of staying on, and no one went to sixth form around here. No one did that. Everyone went straight into a job at 16. So that's what I did. I went straight
yeah.
into a hairdressing salon at 16. Yeah, and
And then obviously you've got great hair, and you've been known to have various colours and whatnot. So were you always interested in hairdressing, or was it something you just kind of fell into?
yeah, I mean, I was actually interested in writing journalism. That's actually what I wanted to go into. Um,
Okay.
and drama. I was part of the drama club, but I was put off of that because I was told that, because of my how well I was performing in my English, that only the skivers, ironically, because I was a skiver in the end, not skiver, but I used to bunk off. So only the kids that bunked off used to go to drama, so they didn't have to actually study, which is actually a load of rubbish. And so I sort of ended up not doing that. But I love drama and acting and writing. I still do enjoy writing. Yeah, and I sort of just fell into hairdressing really. I had a Saturday job initially and did some work experience in a Saturday job, and then ended up in a local salon even. Yeah. So I loved it. I had a great time. Oh my goodness. It's the pay was £28 a week on YTS. For anyone who doesn't know, youth training scheme, like a government youth training scheme.
That was going to be my next question.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, £28 a week I used to earn, and but I used to earn my money in tips, which used to buy all my big junk jewelry earrings of the early 90s and late 80s, and all my fags. That used to go on my tips. So, yeah.
Oh, and how long were you working at the salon for then?
Oh, I went to different salons, I'll be honest. Gosh, I flitted for a few different salons. So I did that up until the age from 16 up until the age of just for 2 years, really 2.5 years. And then I was out of work, and I was not living at home then. And yeah, I didn't know what to do with myself, and I just knew I could drive. And there was adverts for bus drivers for these midi buses. I thought, sod it, a Bow Bus Garage. Again, ironically, because of being a Cockney and being born into the sound of Bow Bells, I ended up working at Bow Bus Garage. And yeah, so I progressed on from hairdressing to bus driving, which was great fun because, as you can imagine, I was a young girl, and I was very blonde, and very booby, and I got lots of attention. So I suppose it's politically correct now, but yeah, it was fun. Lots of swearing. I ended up speaking like a navvy at the time, but yeah, I worked there for, how long did I work at the bus garage for? A year, I suppose. A year I was a bus driver.
Oh, and so back then, I mean, it's still probably it's not that unusual now, but back then was that quite a rare thing to be a female young bus driver?
Yeah, it was. I used to get a lot of attention. Yeah, there was a whole batch of us that was excuse me, sorry, that was in taking on for a new route that they had for the midi buses. So um there was myself and one other girl there, with a whole batch of new recruits, all young, very young, so all like 18 to 20. Um, we had so much fun. Honestly, it was. I've got hilarious stories from driving a bus. So, but, yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good fun. It was good fun. I got lost.
Hmm. Well, feel free to share any stories, anything that crops up, anything that's okay to be aired, but that's up to you. What was like a funny memory that you can recall that you're able to share?
Oh gosh, when I first started, there was 3 routes I used to drive, and when we learnt the routes at the time, we used to be able to smoke on the bus, so we used to sit on the back, and I just ignored the route. And when I went out, that was doing the route learning. When I went out on my first day, there was one particular route in Hackney, which is in London, and you had to turn left at the traffic lights or go straight. And I had a full bus of passengers, and I wasn't sure if I was supposed to go left or straight, and I turned left. And as I turned left, the whole bus just erupted with "Whoa!" And I was like 19 years old. I was like, "Woo!" And so I ended up sort of driving around, and this guy came up to me, this man, and he said, "Is this your first day today, love?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Look, I'm going to show you where to go." And he took me into the local Hackney bus garage, which was full of all. And as I
Yeah.
went in there with a full load of passengers, all of the drivers came out cheering, "Hooray!" Cheering and taking the mickey out of me with these vast load of passengers to be able to turn around and go back on my route. Yeah, so that was an adventure.
I could just imagine it.
It was fun.
Oh, that's hilarious. I'll be wanting to know more of these at a later date.
Mm,
Okay then, so you finished doing the bus driving. You did that for about a year, did you say?
yes,
And crucially, you met your husband,
I did.
your lovely Sarge.
Mhm.
Yeah, like so what was that like meeting him there and what was the sort of story? Are you able to talk us in a bit more detail?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I mean, so as you can imagine, it was, well, first of all, I'll say Sarge is actually short for Sarjid. Sarge is Pakistani. Um, I mean, he was born in London, but yeah, so that threw up a whole heap of. It was typically the bus garage was typically mostly white male, and so we sort of kept it secret initially, because we had a lot of gosh, we had racism. We had a lot of people that were against it, and a lot of people that would make particular comments, and so we sort of kept this little romance hidden. Yeah, I was a driver. Sarge worked initially. He still works for London Transport, TfL, Stagecoach actually, and he did the payroll, and he made sure that every time that I came in, he said to the guys, "Make sure that blonde booby one, whenever she comes in, call me so I can see her." So yeah, I we he asked me out, and that was the start of an amazing relationship. He's an amazing man. He's a very good, kind, and beautiful man, actually. And I'm very blessed to have him as my husband. And we're still very much in love after 33 years.
33 years. And
Mm.
from many sort of conversations, that's something that's so evident that, you've got this wonderful husband and he just supports you and he's the rock, isn't he, really, from what I can see, and
Mhm.
your rock, I should say. I mean, you've got this just beautiful
Mhm.
relationship, and you obviously you got your sort of areas, your strengths, and yeah, it's
Mhm.
just lovely the way that it seems to work. Yeah. So just moving on to the start of your family life then.
Mhm.
So how long was it from when you got with Sarge to having your first child? And can you talk us from the
Yeah.
start of the family life?
Yeah. So that was 5 years, and we met when I was 20, and we had Ambreen when I was 25.
When I was 25.
Um, and yeah, I wanted to have her sooner. I was really desperate to. I always wanted to be a mum, and I was really desperate to have a
Desperate
child.
to have a child.
But yeah, so we had Ambreen at 25, and it was amazing. You know, it was the best thing ever. I was really happy, and we had our own place, our own little flat, and they moved us because I had a child. So yeah, we had a little garden, and it was it was lovely. And then quickly, and there's like 18 months. I should know this better, but between my other daughter, Alana, was then born. Um, in quick succession, I knew that I wanted to have more than two children, really. So I had Alana 2 years straight after that. Um, it was difficult. It's not easy when you're used to having one child, so then have two. But again, I was so blessed. They were just darlings, you know, they really were easy toddlers, and they were just fun and just absolutely delightful. Honestly, they really were good girls, you know, and quite easy. You know, it wasn't easy because
It wasn't
we were on
easy
our
because
own. We didn't really
we were
have
on our
family around, so that was quite tough.
that was quite tough.
Having two,
And
um,
two,
and then
um,
obviously going on to then
and
have
then
four.
going on
It
to
was
the
really hard. But,
yeah. So this might be a good place just to pause then with the nature of the topics then, with it being your neurodivergent, I'll get there eventually, neurodivergent and neurotypical family.
Mhm.
So Ambreen, who's 28 now, who identifies, we'll come back to that. She works in a school. My notes are a bit, I was getting all confused
That's
earlier,
okay.
wasn't I? But yeah, so Ambreen works in school and they're 28. Yeah, tell us a little bit more about Ambreen and Ambreen's neurotypical, and so
Yes.
was your next child, which was Alana, which we'll come on to. So they're the neurotypical in the family, and then when you had the next two, Arie and Luca, they fall into the neurodivergent, and that's really when this whole journey sort of found you, really.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's start with the neurotypical then, if we can.
I will actually just add a little side note in there, in that,
Yes, please do.
my two things actually. First of all, that Alana probably wouldn't say that she was neurotypical, um, and I probably wouldn't as well for myself. But but
Okay.
definitely. And so also before I carry on then further now with all of this, I just wanted to add a little
Yes.
disclaimer for people that are watching, is that these experiences are my experiences of my lived experiences of 15 years of living with neurodiversity and autism. So any terminology that I use or what we use as a family, it can be controversial, different words that I use with autistic or autism or Asperger's, you know, there's different lines of thought with all of these things. So they are my experiences, they're the words that I use. So yeah, so I just wanted to say that beforehand. So they're my thoughts, opinions, and experiences. Yeah, so Ambreen is and my family's diverse. You touched on it earlier with the fact that so my children are all mixed race, obviously. Ambreen, my eldest, was a teenage mum. Um, and so we have a teenage mum, we have mixed race, we have disability, we have, you know, Arie is they're gender neutral, and and then Alannah and Arie are gay, queer, and so we really have this real sort of beautiful mixing pot of a family. That's what I would call us, this beautiful, interesting, fascinating mix of a family. So let me go back to your question. Ambreen,
Yes, thank you.
sorry. So Ambreen has Ricky as her partner, and Liz with her partner, very close to us, and has Eli, my grandson. Ambreen works in a school, and she's an amazing mother. She's just juggles everything, which is a feat in itself. But we support her as much as we can, and she's here almost daily, to be honest. We see her all the time. Yeah.
That's so lovely. You've just got this like really close-knit family, and yeah, it's lovely. Yeah. Sorry. And thank you, by the way, for your sort of disclaimer and any sort of terminology that I get wrong or bits.
Oh, that's
It's a lot for my brain to try and
Mhm.
get it all catch it. I've got all my notes here, so yeah. So back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. And also, I wanted to explain what neurodiverse and neurotypical means.
Yeah.
So neurodiversity is anybody who it's quite a big spectrum. So we used to people always thought that it was just autism, but as the science has grown and people become more knowledgeable in this over the years, so we've got Asperger's again, which is not actually a diagnosis anymore, but for example, my Arie relates to being somebody who has Asperger's. And also there's ADHD or there's sensory processing. So there's PDA as well. So it's quite a big spectrum. And so I definitely would class myself as neurospicy. So and same as Alannah. And I wouldn't say that I particularly have autism, although I've never been diagnosed, but I definitely fit under the umbrella of being neurodiverse of some way, for sure. I have sensory issues. And neurotypical is anyone who's not any of that stuff. So anyone else is
Yeah.
neurotypical, or atypical. So that's everybody else, and so that's what we mean when we talk about that. So it's I have also, as well as all the other things, I have the neurodiverse and mixed neurodiverse and neurotypical family as well. Yes, what was we saying? I've just gone off on one there.
Yes, it's just an educational bit really initially, because there'll be people that are watching, hopefully that can take a lot out of this really from your lived-in experience. And
Mhm.
your children are older now, ranging from 28 to Luca's 18, is that right?
Yep.
And so you've had nearly 30 years of family life, but not just your sort of typical, um, neurotypical family and all of that, as if that's not challenging enough. But,
Mhm.
when you add on these diagnoses, but those challenges that it brings up. So if we go back to Ambreen, and then you had Alannah. Was that just quite normal up until that point?
Mhm.
Are you able to just talk us like the timeline in a bit more depth of bringing those two up?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it was like I said, it was tough. The two girls were like I said, amazing, and it was quite a doddle. I'll be honest with you. I suppose on reflection, the reason why I'm saying it was a doddle is because I then had the experience of Luca, and everything is a doddle
Yeah.
compared to bringing up. That's the honest
Yeah.
truth. Yeah, they were. It was a really blessed and fun time. We we used to have people around all the time. We'd have family parties and stuff. So yeah, things changed after we had Luca. A lot changed. So
Yeah. And I loved reading your bio as well and just understanding more about the challenges really. Okay then, so moving to how old were you when you had Arie?
now you're asking. So Arie is 19. You want me to say how old
19.
I was?
Oh,
um,
sorry.
no, that's absolutely fine. I'm 53. I've got no.
You look amazing.
Yeah, no, absolutely no problem. Gosh, so 20 years ago, so practically 20 years ago, I was 32 when I had Arie.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a bit older, 33, 34 even, if I'm getting my maths wrong, I think. Yes. So again, then we had our third girl, and I will add on again that even though I'm talking about Arie as my daughter at the time, that they don't that their gender is not female now. So I'm talking about them in past tense, and they had a
Mhm.
different birth name there, but we don't, that's not their name anymore. So um, but yeah, Arie was amazing. Oh gosh, Arie was spot rotten. Because we had this beautiful third daughter who was the older two were old enough to spoil her rotten at the time of her, and beautiful mop of big curls, and as you can imagine, they're very beautiful, my mixed race children, and yeah, it was a really happy, yeah, they were, again, but with Arie, it's only stuff on reflection when I look back. They hit their milestones a bit later. But I was so busy, it was so busy having three, and then all the usual stuff of uniform, school reports. I'd worked on and off and stuff. So yeah, so yeah, it was a busy time. So I didn't sort of initially pick up on missed milestones. Arie walked a bit later. They used to have lots of sensory issues, which I didn't pick up on. They used to do this thing like this all the time, wanting to crave sort of. It's like hypersensitive, hyposensitive, and hypersensitive. So they really wanted to
Mhm.
sort of. We called it scrumming. In our family, we say scrumming. We want to chum you, scrum you. But Arie would do this a lot, and I didn't. I just thought it was just part of what we did, so I didn't really pick up on that. So yeah.
And when you say that you call it scrumming, is that what some people would refer to as
No, that's seriously
stimming?
personal. No, yeah, stimming. Yeah, so that absolutely. So for
Is that the
me,
same thing?
kind of. So for us as a family, I've got some friends who do the same thing. We use that scrumming term as, if like if you see a
It's
child,
nice,
and
yeah.
you think, oh, I want to chum their chops.
Yeah.
That's what we use. That's the term we use.
Cheek pinchers, we'd call them back
Yeah.
in my day.
We use the
Yeah.
arms as well. I love a bit of chumming. But
Yeah.
yeah. And the legs. Oh, the lovely legs. So, but stimming is self-stimulation. So that's if somebody who is neurodiverse has or has sensory processing difficulties. So any sensory processing difficulties are anything to do with your five senses, where they're sort of skewed. It's about the connection in the brain with our senses. So it could be overstimulation or understimulation, which is hypo or hypersensitive. So some people crave deep hugs, which is what Arie was craving. But other people on the spectrum, you can't go near them because any kind of touch will just be painful. Certain clothes will touch. Sounds, lots of people who have got sensory processing difficulties will. They can hear. Some people say they can hear Wi-Fi. They have
Mhm.
hypersensitive hearing. Or again, the opposite, where they crave loud noises and they just need that craving to stimulate. So with if they're overstimulated, so if you were out in a crowd in the busy shopping supermarket, and there'll be lots of noise, lots of smells, people with perfume, people shouting, and it becomes very overstimulating. I used the supermarket example It's a very good one because I've become very overstimulated in a supermarket, as did my children. And so there would be certain things that somebody on the spectrum would self-soothe, which was stimming. So very often you'll find people flapping, with young ones flapping. They will visually use it to see, or they'll flap because it feels nice, or finger tapping, people tapping their legs. I'm doing it, but you can't see. Are you know, like joggling your leg with your knee, tapping, all these kind of things. These are all self-stimming stimulation just to help you calm, to bring yourself sort of back into center as you know, as a person. So yeah, that's
And
what's in.
was it sorry, was it Alannah that was doing the stimming or the scrumming
Arie.
initially?
Arie.
Yeah. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Just one question then. So did you know much about Asperger's or autism like before your children were born? Like was it
Not
ever in your sort of
really.
orbit?
Not really. It wasn't on my radar at all. Not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it wasn't on my radar until Luca. Yeah, no, not at all. Yeah, and
And
then
I'm
I was
guessing as well it wasn't much talked about really when you were
not so much back then.
younger.
I mean, now, oh gosh, the diagnosis of people with diagnosis more now. There are more people dying. Again, it's because of education. People understand more. People are able to recognize it more, which is what I'll come on to afterwards with Arie. So female presentation is now recognized, which previously wasn't so much. So these things, excuse me, are picked up better now. People recognize it. There are more books, there are more things like this, and you know, so more. It's spoken about much more than when Luca was first diagnosed. Yeah.
Okay. So that must have been quite a minefield, which we'll go into in a bit more depth.
Mhm.
So coming on to Luca then. So Luca was diagnosed with global developmental delay and hearing loss age 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's go there then. So tell us a bit about that, Joe.
Yeah, so when Luca was born, he was in Skaboo for a day. He had vomited blood, and but he seemed fine. He was, again, as you can imagine, a first boy of 3 girls. He was spot rotten and chummed and scrummed all over the place, and he had an abundance of love around him. Um, and we didn't clock it initially, but obviously, being a parent of 3 other children, I did start to recognize that he wasn't hitting his milestones. You know, he wasn't rolling over, he wasn't cooing, he wasn't making any of the verbal stimulation. He wasn't moving. You know, he wasn't speaking at all, trying to speak. He didn't respond to his name. All of those things. So we got to, you know, the health visitors checks and stuff, and so he had to. They do newborn hearing tests now, so he failed them from the off. So it literally was from the off rounds of appointments. I literally started off with failed hearing tests and then being referred to the local pediatric audiology department. And so we were started off with the appointments there. And then when he got to 2, actually, but it was obvious by the age of 2 that he wasn't talking. It's very easy, like I said, because I had 3 girls and they were all quite, the first 2, Ambreen especially, they were very forward, and they you know, they hit their milestones really early and spoke early and were writing early and all that kind of stuff. So it's you know, people kept saying to me, "Oh, he's a boy. Boys take longer to develop, and just don't, you know, don't," which is right, you know, don't go by the percentiles and that kind of stuff. But there's a time when you know that it's more than that. You know, like he wasn't. He walked much later, and you know, after 1, which is can be common, but it was everything else. You know, he wasn't talking at all. He wasn't responding to his name. He was happy, he was smiley, but he just, there was something off. We knew it. So from 2, really, he was referred 2.5 over to our local team at Wellington Way, and they diagnosed him with global developmental delay, which is an umbrella for everything, really. Lax ligaments. So we didn't know that at the time, but his ligaments and his muscles hadn't developed. He had lack of muscle tone, the speech delay, and hearing loss, and what else? Everything. Yeah, so we had that, and these are called comorbid conditions, like co-occurring side by side, which is very common with people who are neurodivergent, any kind of neurodiverse diagnosis. They very often will have comorbid diagnosis, such as seizures, epilepsy, which Luca actually did develop later on, epilepsy, speech disorders, yeah, and developmental coordination disorder, which is basically dyspraxia. He was diagnosed with that as well. So we had from 2.5, 3 years old, once he was in the system, that was it. Oh my gosh, over and out. We were just speech therapists, occupational therapists. For testing, we were at Great Ormond Street for genetic testing. Yeah, it was a round of appointments. And as you can imagine, I had 3 other children, and Arie was a toddler. And so Luke was a baby, Arie was a toddler. It was tough. You know, it was emotionally tough. It was emotionally draining. Oh, I've lost you, sorry.
Cool.
Sorry. And yeah, it was hard. It was I'm struggling for my words here to give you the that's how I feel.
Yeah.
I think when we were talking of going to talk when you asked me to do this talk, I sat and wrote down all of this. And so for a couple of days I've been thinking about it. It's been on my brain, and my heart, I've been able to feel my heart has been really not heavy, but just remembering going back to them times. And I just it was such a whirlwind, Tamsin, you know, it was a crazy time, you know, it really was. And just think, how bloody hell did I go through that and cope with that? Because it was a lot.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, I there's so many different questions that I could ask and so many different topics. There's the interest in wanting to know the diagnosis and the effects on the family life, you know, your marriage, the other children, and you know, your focus needing to be on Luca, but then, you know, you've got other children in the household, husband that, you know, want your attention as well.
Mhm.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like, you know, you've given here, there, and everywhere and stuff, but then just picking up on what you've said, like going back and thinking like, oh my God, because like we can be really strong women, can't we? And you know, men, and just get on with our lives. And then you sit back and you think, that was a lot. So I'm aware that whatever I say is probably not even going to, you know, do it justice, and the sort of questions really. But can we go to the effects of the diagnosis for Luca and
Mm,
what those early sort of years were like, and the effects that it had on the
absolutely.
family?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, I'm just going to move in and out of the diagnosis, and then with the fee,
Yeah,
the the knock-on effect, and how um, it did affect our family hugely, and the sacrifices that we had to make and I had to make due to that. Um, well, Luca then further to that, because of all of the testing that went on and on, we had an amazing consultant at the pediatric audiology department, and she then referred Luca on when he was 6 to the ADOS team, and not the ADOS team, that's the ADOS test. I'm writing this all down now. The ASDAS team, which is the autism spectrum. Oh gosh, I've got it written down here. Anyway, they're the people that do all the diagnosing. And actually, it's
it's all the
a really long
acronyms,
wait.
isn't it, Joe?
Oh god, so many. Yeah, it's in Townhamlets, for example, there's an 18-month waiting list to get your child diagnosed, which is crazy. that's another subject altogether. But yeah, we were very blessed that, you know, I had an amazing consultant, and she referred us to the Royal ENT Hospital, and the psychologist there did the ADOS test, which is the bog standard testing, which is perfect for Luca, not so perfect for Arie. We'll talk about that afterwards. But that's he was. So we knew it was coming. We knew it was coming. He was doing all of the typical autism stuff. He was obsessed with dominoes. He was obsessed with marbles. He would line things up. He didn't understand sarcasm. He wasn't socially aware about anything. He was very vulnerable. Oh gosh, all of the autism sort of triad, the triad of impairment, which I'm going to read out to you now, which is social integration, communication and language, and imagination and rigidity of thinking. And Luca had all of this triad. So it's very easy when you have a child to see them lining things up and thinking autism, because that's what we hear. Or, you know, or if they're obsessed with dinosaurs, autism. No, it has to be all of these three things in connection together, linking up. And so Luca had this obsession with, you know, his trains and his dominoes and marbles, and we knew it was coming. You know, he still wasn't really speaking, odd words here and there. At 7, I think he didn't say mum till he was about 5 or 6, and so we had appointment after appointment after appointment. We got his diagnosis at 7, and which is a long old, you know, you have to fill out. You have to go back on all of the history, and it's a tough time to get a diagnosis. And then when we got the diagnosis, it was expected, but it still hits you. It's the grief that hits you, you know? I think it's that. Well, I'm going to read a poem out at the end, and I think it explains it very, very well. But it's that the loss, really. I think the loss. Luca is my son. I've had 3 daughters, so it's all of that of not having what society expects of a son and how that should look. You know, I felt the loss of that. And for Sarge as well as dad, you know, he wasn't at the time, he wasn't interested in football, and Sarge is a massive football player, and so and the strain it took on our family was huge, Tamsin. It was huge. The appointments, I just wasn't available emotionally and physically because I had to attend so many appointments. You know, it was just a stream of appointments, and then in between appointments I would be writing emails and researching and learning. I took it upon myself that it was very important for me to understand autism, and so I went on as many courses as I could. I became completely absorbed in the autism world, which is highly recommended. With the National Autistic Society, I joined parent support groups, just to be able to vent off and speak to other parents who actually, you know, knew exactly where I was coming from, and the things that we were experiencing. It meant that I had less time, you know, for the others. So you know, as women, we juggle, you know, we juggle balls, you know. That's just, you know, we want to be women of many faces, you know. We want to be, you know, mum. We want to be wife, lover, friend, Joe. You know, we you know, ourself. We expect this of ourselves, and almost society expects this of us to have this face, all these different masks to wear. But I think there comes a time when you're juggling so many balls that something has to drop, you know, and something has to drop. And I think that's the sacrifices. You know, career was the one that I missed out on when I was talking about the different faces. And for me, it was career as well. You know, I wasn't able to work at all. There was no way I could work. No way. But I had to have something. So I always did as much voluntary work that I could. I have a very good outreach team within Tower Hamlets. These are the autism support team from the local school, the local autistic school. They have an outreach team for parents who've got kids in mainstream schools. And so I would do voluntary work and go to meetings and learn and, like I say, go to as many training courses as I could. And this helped. It helped me to to keep my sanity, to keep me, and to help me feel that I was learning, even though it was about the topic that my whole life was absorbed in autism, and it still is really to an extent, I'll be honest. And so yeah, knowledge is power, and so yeah, I'm completely lost my train of thought now. But
That's okay. No, I've been listening. So this might be a good place to pause and just recap then. So the viewers will by now get a sense that this really became your full-time job, essentially. And just before we go into that, I picked up on what you said that that Luca didn't say mum until he was 5 years old. Yeah, can you tell us a bit more about that? Because that's huge, isn't it? And what that moment must have been like. That's quite a pivotal moment in your family
yeah,
life.
yeah. Well, I remember because the first school that Luca went to was for it was a mainstream school when it had a language unit within the school. So he was always in a class of maximum 10. And that was from reception, because he went to a nursery with his hearing aids, a hearing support nursery, where we learned sign language. I don't even know, there's so many things Tam said. So we learned sign language because he couldn't talk, not knowing then about the sorry, my computer's just gone because I haven't touched for a while. There you go. Not knowing then that actually he couldn't really process the sign language as well, because he had this processing language, expressive and receptive processing disorder of his speech. So sign is just another form of language. So he was finding it hard to process that. I didn't understand that at the time. We just thought because he had a hearing loss, because he couldn't speak, I'll learn sign language and that I will find a way to communicate with him. We use PECs as well, which is pictures to help him point to things. Famously, people with autism don't point at things, though. So that's things that, again, I learned along the way. Oh gosh, I've completely gone off of the question again. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. That's all right. So, one thing I wanted to pick up on from when you sent the bio is that with the sign language, does that sound the BSI, is that British Sign Language? Is that yeah? I got that one right. Did you, as a family, all learn that then? Did you?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
what
yeah,
was
we
that
did.
like?
We did, and I've just remembered I was going to tell you a story, so I'm just going to go back. We did learn sign
Yeah.
language. I took the exam and Alannah took the exam. The story I was going to tell you was being in a playground at Globe School, which he used to go to the language unit with his TA, and he was, I suppose, about 6 then, and he wasn't talking, and I'd gone there for a meeting and then gone out to watch him play in the playground, and I was chatting with the TA, and I said to her, I don't know if he's ever going to speak. And it just, sometimes you say something and you hear it for the first time. And obviously, he wasn't speaking. But as I said it, it hit me. And so I just sat there. I stood there in the playground. Me and the TA, we both stood there crying. And because she just hugged me. She put her arm around me, which was absolutely the right thing, because sometimes there isn't words, is there? Sometimes you just have to listen and be for somebody, and that's exactly what she did for me. But yeah, I think every now and again we had them moments where that we realized that, oh my gosh, he's, at the time I felt I couldn't even see a time when he would be able to speak, and then he wasn't responding to the sign language, and his sign name used to be this, because he used to just jump everywhere, because that was his self-stimulation, that was his stimming. So Luca used to love to jump. We got a trampoline because that would be his let off steam, to be able to just jump. He needed that, that that stimulation. That's what he needed, for his body. But I didn't realize that. I learned that as we went along. We realized that that's what his needs were. But yes, with the sign language, I actually really took to sign language. I absolutely love using sign language. But yeah, it wasn't really needed for Luca. I just love doing it. But we all did learn it. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it something that you're quite fluent in? Is it, you know, if you saw, you know, a situation where it was kind of needed, could you fall into that quite quickly still, or is it sort of
Yeah, I have
gone
done.
now?
I have done. I've helped a lady in the
Yeah.
shop in the bra department at M&S before. So,
Oh,
a deaf lady who I helped her to communicate with the staff. But I can sign up to a level 2, which is a bit rubbish. So anyone who can sign probably would say, "Oh, that's rubbish." So I can have a conversation when I practice. Um, I
yeah.
can just about get by. I can just about get by with it, but yeah, I'm well out of practice. But I do love it. It's great fun.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You're a very interesting person just to have a conversation with, and you know, just get the feel that there's just never a dull moment in your household,
Ah,
in your sort of
for
circles.
sure. Oh, no.
Yeah, and you're just like this wealth of information, and yeah. So with Luca, you've mentioned that he had an interest or still has an interest in trains.
Mhm.
Um, what other stuff did he like to do as a little boy then? Can you tell us a bit more about your little boy back then?
Yeah. I mean my little boy he was hard work. He was a runner, which is another common thing, which is we went to CAMS at the time. I don't know if you know what CAMS is. CAMS is Child and Mental Health Services for young people.
Yeah,
And at the time, we went to. I mean, it was hilarious. We went to CAMS and got that they observed us through a window as a family with Luca just doing stuff. And then two people came in. It was hilarious, honestly. Sometimes it's so hilarious. They come in the room and had a conversation between themselves in front of us, because
yeah,
I just wanted help, because Luca used to run, and I had Arie and I had Luca, and if he wasn't strapped in, and he hated being strapped in, he would run, and I couldn't. I had a toddler, you know, and I couldn't run after him, and so there was one time that was particularly dangerous, which is when I asked for help. We were on the DLR, the Docklands Light Railway train, and he ran off, and we just got off the train just as it was something I had nightmares about for months afterwards, I'll be honest. But we just got off the train just in time before the doors shut, and all I kept imagining was the doors shutting and him being gone. So you know, it was a bit of a nightmare. And so and he would often run when it would be a meltdown, something had overstimulated him. I didn't know that at the time because I hadn't, you know, I recollect from very young he used to do this. And so we went to go and ask CAMS for some advice, and they just sat there talking between themselves at this table, just saying, "No, what do you think that Luca, you know, oh, perhaps Luca, the mum should watch out for, you know, to make sure I hold his hands or put a lid." And I thought, I know all the things they were saying was it wasn't helpful. The advice that what I needed, which I know now, which I didn't know, is to, you know, you can't stop a meltdown. You can't stop. Once a meltdown is happening, you can't stop it. You have to stand back and let that person, that child person, have the meltdown. However, you can start to recognize the signs of what triggers your child for a meltdown. So once we knew what Luca's triggers were, so for example, when he used to come home from school, get transport to take him to school and bring him home. Because he had to go to a specific school out of area. So he had transport. So when he came in, I used to, when he walked in the door, I'd say, "Oh, Luca, hi, Luca. How was your day, darling? Here's your snack. Come and sit with mummy. Come and tell me about your day." And he used to, he'd throw everything. And so obviously what had happened is, you know, I was told this analogy in a training course. It's like having a can of Coke, you know, like if you've got a bottle of Coke and you know, Luca's at school and he goes into school and the bus goes a different way to what it usually goes every single day. That's like shaking a Coke bottle one time. Then he goes into school and his usual TA isn't there, it's someone else they haven't told him. That's like shaking the bottle another time. He goes to get lunch and in the queue, there are people screaming and shouting, and shaking it again. During the day, they decide they're going on a trip and they hadn't told him about it, and they're going on a trip, changing routine. So by the time he comes home by a different route on the bus again, he walks into the door, and because he's in his safe place, he knows that he's loved and he's supported. It's like opening that lid of that Coke and it explodes. So we learned this. So what we did, instead of him walking in the door and going at him, we literally were silent. So he would walk in the door, I would put up in his room his snacks, and he would go straight up to his room and he would stay in his room, or we would leave him and he would have to stay for an hour in complete silence up in his room before any of us could talk to him. Now, this is one of the things I think that's most important, that really, I think, that really has struck me as a parent, being a parent of someone of a child with autism, is being able to throw the parenting rule book out the window, Tamsin. You know, you can't. I brought up, 3 children, even though I'll go on to Arie afterwards, but there are certain things that I was always really regimented about. 7 o'clock, you have to be in bed, bath, bed, story, bed. I had a routine, and once you have a child on the spectrum, that routine's I won't swear, that's bugger. It's out the window. You have to pick your fight. What happens then is that you as a family are invited to a wedding. You know that your child is going to go to that wedding and they are going to kick off. They will end up screaming. They would end up, screaming or throwing food around, whatever, completely melting down. So what do you do? You don't go, or one of you goes and with the children, and you don't go together. One of you stays at home. It's sacrifices you have to make. You are the advocate for your child, and you learn to be able to say no. It's important, and to feel not embarrassed by that, to feel strong in that, to know that you are your child's advocate. And if you can't go to the family Christmas meal, then tough. You can't go, because that is for the best of your child, to keep your child safe and happy. Sarge goes with the kids, not me, and we stay at home, or the other way around. And that's how we've had to do it. If your child can't cope with sitting at the dinner table because they can't tolerate the sound of other people eating, don't make them come and sit at the dinner table. Let them eat their dinner upstairs. It just goes completely against the grain of what you should be doing as a parent. But if you want a happy life and your child to have a happy life, you just have to throw that rule book out the window, and you do what suits your family and what suits your child, because you are the advocate, and it's so important. And I think that's really a big lesson that I learned, because Luca, we went through a couple of years of Luca being extremely aggressive because he couldn't cope with everything, and I didn't learn all of them things that I've just said. I kept on pushing still, making sure he was still coming down to dinner, or he still came out with us, or he would run, or he would punch me, or he'd headbutt me. I would try to control him, and instead of letting him be, I would try and hold him, and he would attack me. And so we went through years of being attacked physically. That happened for some time. It wasn't a nice experience. It was scary and it was horrible, and that's the reality of what it is, and a lot of parents still go through this with their old autistic children. But really, we're really blessed that we had a lot of input and support, and I read and made sure that I knocked down all the doors to find out what was going on and why it was going on. Yeah. Sorry, I've just talked.
And that's no, it's so interesting. I'm just sort of taking it all in and just trying to put myself in your shoes, and I'm just sort of thinking, oh my God, like, we know each other, but to actually go into those scenarios, and just hearing you talk about it, I'm just thinking, like, that is such a lot. And you know like you say, there's no rule book, especially back then, and just sort of trying to understand the knock-on effects that this must have had on your other children and, you know,
Mhm.
Sarge as well. And yeah, it is a lot for anybody to deal with. And
Mhm.
like you mentioned earlier, this did become your full-time job, and you've mentioned
Absolutely.
about the sacrifices that you've had to make or
Mhm.
that you've wanted to make, however you look at it. And that you've had these various jobs along the way, but because your family is understandably your top priority,
Mhm.
that's naturally been the thing where you've had to say, right, I can't do this job anymore. I've got this to deal with. And the day-to-day running of everything must have been extremely challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. It was very hard, you know, and just, and like I said, yeah, I was very aware of it, and I was very, very, because I'm a real self-analyzer, so I always really took as much effort. I'll rephrase that. I made as much effort as I could to try and do time for each of the girls, like, you know, try and take, you know, go to the cinema with them, or take time out, do some cooking with them, or um, take time out for me and Sarge. If we got a babysitter, we would try and go out for a meal. Few and far between when they were young, like really, really was. But I think communication is so, so important in a relationship. You know, like as you can probably tell, I'm a talker. You know, so and I'm very transparent person. Sometimes too, but I too much so. But I will make sure that has always been such a
That has
priority.
always been such
You know,
a
my
priority.
parenting job was really important to me, and my marriage
And
was always really
my
important to me. And
marriage.
because we were so in love and so really fancied each other still, I needed I needed that as well, you know. And so I always made sure that I would speak with Sarge. You know, we would have our time on our own of a night time where we would say, you know, "You all right? You all right?" You know, and go through it. And even though, yes, like you touched on at the beginning, we've always had our roles, whereas I've always been the one that's made the phone calls, gone to the meetings, wrote all of the emails. Um, I always made sure that Sarge saw all of it. So he was kept in the loop. He wasn't complete, and he attended as many as he could possibly come to the meetings. But that was always my thing. Um, but I've always felt it was
I've
so
always
important
felt it was
to
so on
work on our relationship as with the
our
kids as well as Sarge. But
relationship
of
as
course it
well as
dropped.
God. But of course,
You know, it would dropped, and that's what happened with Arie. Do you want me to move on to that? Is that okay for me to move on to that
yeah,
without?
wherever you, yeah, wherever you want
Um,
to go, it's all interesting.
um, so yeah, it was Arie kicked into their I'll refer to Arie as they them now, because that's their pronouns. So they kicked into their teens, um, and all of a sudden I just knew that, again, I don't want to disclose too much, even though I do have permission from Arie and the others to share. I don't want to disclose too much of their personal stuff, but
Yeah,
things were
that's
difficult. It
understandable.
was
Yeah.
it was difficult, and I couldn't get why. I mean, I got that they didn't have as much attention because but I would then try and overcompensate, and you know, and so there was loads of stuff going on. Again, I can't disclose all of it, but there was lots of stuff going on, and I just kept thinking, what is going on here? And then I just had this brain ding moment. I was sitting I remember even exactly where I was sitting talking to them in the living room, and as they were talking to me, their tone was monotone. It was monotone as they were talking,
Monotone as they were talking.
and I just went, "Oh my gosh." I'm absolutely sure that I was on the spectrum, so I
I
thought,
was on the
"Okay,
spectrum, so
they
okay.
don't fit in with everything that I know of what ASD looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Let me now read about female presentation." So that's when I went online. I researched. There's in the Lorna Wing Centre. There's an amazing doctor called Dr. Lorna. What's her name? I don't know. No, Dr. Judith Gould. and she was talking about on YouTube. I found videos of her talking about female presentation and the diagnostic tools that they use to diagnose boys are just, and they're not really good diagnostic tools for females because of the things that they do. There's specific tests, and there's a book about a frog or something that they have to read, and then traditionally a child on the spectrum wouldn't be able to use their imagination, which is part of what I was saying about the triad of impairments, the rigidity of thinking and the imagination. However, for a female on the spectrum, it's the opposite of that often, sometimes.
Okay.
And so you often find somebody who's neurodiverse who actually is a daydreamer and will just be off with and have these magical worlds, and they're great writers, and so we have these magical worlds, and Arie is the most beautiful writer and poet, and this is where it comes from. And so and what the other thing that as a female on the spectrum, which is hence why many women are diagnosed so late now in life, is because we are amazing at wearing masks that I was talking about earlier. And so as women, naturally we wear masks. We know who we have social adaptability, who we're talking to, and how to change your face, a different mask on. But a female on the spectrum becomes an absolute expert at this. They really, this is their thing. They watch. And so another thing is echolalia, which is a really common symptom of ASD. And echolalia is, it just means exactly what it sounds like, is repeating back words. So often that's what, as girls, they would learn. Somebody, a young girl on the spectrum would be watching what their mum is like, what their sisters are like, and the things that they say, and just will repeat. And films that they like and they obsess over, they'll watch them over and over and will repeat things. And sometimes it's very easy to pick it up if a child is not, that really isn't verbal, and they just have echolalia and they repeat back the sentences. That's so easy to pick up. But however, with this, it's really difficult, and that's how a girl will cope with autism. And then once the hormones kick in, or you're buggered, and then that's when all hell lets loose, because it's then the mask drops. And so it's very common for women with severe mental health or eating disorders who are actually on the spectrum and just undiagnosed. So anyway, so I researched this deeply and wrote a massive big thing, because Arie did go for testing for ADOS test, and I was told they weren't on the spectrum, and I knew this wasn't true. So I researched and wrote a big long thing about paper on it and sent it to CAMHS and just said, no, I don't accept this. I demand that you that Arie is taking in for a new for new testing, and I want you to use a different way to test, and I want to have specialists who understand female presentation. And that's what happens, and that's when we got the diagnosis of Asperger's, which is not officially said now, but that is, and it was like a weight off of Arie's shoulders. All of a sudden we have a reason for some people it doesn't work like that, but for some people it does. It's being able to name that thing, to be able to say, oh my goodness, I think this way because of this, actually I am neurodiverse. And so therefore that's why I really struggle with meeting new people. I can't look people in the eye. That's why I can't be on the train, and the sound of the train, the noise, it drives me, I get a panic attack, or all of these things. It starts to all fall into puzzles, all fit into place, so yes. Anyway, I've talked again.
Yeah. No, it's this is what we're here for. And I think just for you being so open and transparent, it's just going to help anybody watching. And it might be that a young family or whatnot, that they have a child and they're just maybe starting to see some signs where things are not quite quote unquote normal. And yeah, and there is plenty of information out there, but you just never quite know who will just see this and just think, oh, actually, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. And it's educational as well. Like I'm learning so much as well. So thank you. Um, so what would you say, like from looking back on the history of all these diagnoses, like what would you say to your younger self, um,
Yeah,
knowing everything that you know now?
yeah, good question. I think I think it was it I think to be able to speak to my younger self now, I would give her a hug because she would need one. I would tell her that that this is not going to last. This is for sorry, my computer's gone again. Can you still see me? Yeah, there you go. That
Yes,
this
yeah.
is for a very short period of time, and that you can do this. But I would also make sure that she knew not to be too proud to accept help, um, to say yes to people who are offering to cook a meal or to babysit or to help with a bit of housework. Say yes to that. Don't be too proud for it. Accept help and ask for help. And also to make sure, which I did anyway, but to really lean into and onto support groups. They were my
Mhm.
lifeline. They really, really were, and that's where I got my training. And knowledge is power. Keep reading. Keep talking to other mums, talking to professionals, learning tips, and yeah, and it's not going to last. And I think I said this to you before, but my East End, mum, what we were always told was head up and tits out. It was this whole this whole thing of, I'm a strong East End woman, I've got this. It doesn't have to be East End, but I'm just saying that
Mm.
as my own. But we've got this, head up, tits out, you can do this, you can juggle these balls, and yes, you will drop some and
Yes, you
you'll
will
make
drop
mistakes,
some and you
but you'll be able to pick them back up again,
back
and
up
I
again,
think
and
that
that
that this you
that this
that I would like to be able to show me Luca now, like I couldn't
Mm.
see past the no speech. It was absolutely terrifying for me how his life would turn out. I was absolutely. I mean, I won't lie. It still does worry me. But he's worked in a cafe part-time. He's going to college starting in 2 weeks' time. He don't stop talking. He's hilarious. He's absolutely hilarious. I'm so proud of him. He's funny, he's strong, he's able to communicate fully with us now, fully. He doesn't stop. Um, you know,
Mm.
and so for me to be able to my younger self to be able to see Luca now, that's would been so powerful for me, like really powerful, because I was so blinkered, I couldn't see past this little boy or this young man, younger teenager, who was attacking me, who was smashing the house up. I'd smashed TVs. We it was hard, Tamsin. He smashed his room up many times. His Xbox and whatnot. It was smashed up because he couldn't cope. So like I said, knowledge is power. Arm yourself. Really talk to me. If you want to talk to me, talk to me. Email me. Tamsin will put my email address down below. If you want to talk, to me, ask me any more questions,
Yeah.
please do. But yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was so kind of you to say that. So yeah, so we'll share and put your links on below the video when it's uploaded, and anybody that wants to get in touch with Joe for just that sort of human interaction. Obviously, you should always speak to your GP and go through all of those sort of channels. But if you just need somebody to reach out to, Joe is one of the most approachable ladies that you'll probably ever come across. So I'm not quite finished yet. If you've got a few more minutes, just wanted to say that from reading your bio that you sent over the other day, and then having this conversation, one of the things that I just really admire about you, Joe, is that the way that you've gone that you've approached this whole situation. It cannot have been easy at all. And one of the things that I really love is that you said that you just let your children breathe and just be themselves.
Mhm.
And that's a really powerful thing, like when you said about sort of throwing away um the handbook, kind of in the parenting handbook, and just thinking, well, that's not going to work in this scenario. You've got to do probably a lot of spiritual work as well. And
Mhm, mhm.
yeah, so I just really admire your patience in the way you've handled everything. The other thing that I was going to ask you, it sort of dawned on me earlier actually when I was doing my cooking, and I was just thinking, do you believe, Joe, that children choose their parents?
Ooh, good question. I mean, I'd like to think so. I think I've, I mean, it's so hard, isn't it? It's the real English thing about not being able to say nice things about yourself. It's really, I almost stutter over even saying these things. But I mean,
Ah,
people have said this to me before, that that Arie and Luca came to me for, because I could cope, because I was able to do all of the things that I have done for them and with them. It's
yeah.
yeah, yeah. I do. They've taught me so many things. As a woman, growing. It's because of them. Oh, I get a bit emotional now. Yeah,
Ah,
definitely. Mm, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I think so.
It's
It's a
amazing what you've done, and just from seeing how you are in this moment, yeah, it's a beautiful life that you've created, and you and Sarge have obviously put in so much effort, and the love is evident, and your children are very, very blessed to have you as parents. And just thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure there's probably bits that I've forgotten, or
me.
maybe
I'm sure
names
so
wrong
much.
or whatever, but there's a lot to the story, and I'd love to have you back on again a later day, and we could talk. There's many different topics, from um disability, and also the female presentation. Can you just tell me what exactly that is? I meant to ask you earlier. You didn't say,
Yeah, I
did
mean,
you?
just basically, literally, for what it is, presenting as a female, just so 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 female presentation of ASD is different to a male presentation of ASD. So that's
Right,
literally
okay.
how you present yourself as somebody with autism. Yeah. So
Right,
as a
okay.
woman with autism, the presentation, how you would see them, is completely different to how a male would present as somebody on the spectrum.
Right, okay. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I've written set down so many different things. Like, oh, what's this one?
Okay.
Yeah, so thank
Please come on,
you.
question.
Okay. This leads us to a lovely poem that you've shared. Can
Mhm.
you talk us the history about the poem and who gave that to you?
Yeah, so I have a very beautiful friend, Dutch friend, who also had a child with problems and difficulties. At the same time, that their son was the same age as my Ari, and so we were close. And at the time, it was from my church. I was going to church, so I knew them from church, and they were Dutch. And when Luca had his autism diagnosis, she shared this. I mean, there's a poem. It's like a little short sort of story, not story, but it's a little thing, a little kind of poem, and it's called "Welcome to Holland." And she shared that with me, and it's very poignant. And when we both sat there and crying when we both read it out, and yeah, it's something that stuck with me, and I always share with people, and it's always really. It's a really good way of being able to explain how it feels to have a child with additional
Hmm.
needs in whatever capacity that looks. Yeah, not just autism or neurodiversity, whatever. Because actually, I think the history of the poem is actually from a parent of a child with Down syndrome. who has Down syndrome. That's who she wrote it. But it relates to any parent really with a child
Oh,
on, got a disability. Yeah. Can I just say one more thing,
beautiful. And would you like?
Pam,
Yes, of
before
course, Joe. Yeah.
I just want to say that, and it just reminded me because some very, very kind words that you said back to me, is that love. I think it's the kids always laugh at me because I have like the thing downstairs, all you need is love, and I always say that the Beatles song, all you need is love, and I always, they always joke with me and I go, oh mum, and especially my Alannah, she's quite political, she always has been, and very clever girl, and she always say, oh, mum, it's that's too simplified, you oversimplify it. But I don't think it is. I think that the answer is love always. I think which way you turn in all of this, the answer is always love. And it always what I always come
100%.
back to. It always what I come back to. Whatever you believe, that is always, is love will always be the answer. And that's always.
I love that, and I totally agree. And yeah, it is just all about love, isn't it? And giving love and basically
Receiving.
embodying love and giving people unconditional love as well. And there's far too much hate, and yeah, and people are generally trying to just do their best as well, aren't they? And if you can
For
give
sure.
somebody some kindness, sometimes just somebody to listen to, then that's a beautiful thing. So yeah, totally
Definitely.
agree.
Definitely. Am I still there with you?
You are.
There you go. It keeps going on. There you go. Yeah, kindness is magic. Yes, for sure. So shall I read out the do you want me to read this out now?
Yes, unless there's anything else you want to say before we close. But yeah, I just love this poem, so thank you for sharing it with me, and if you'd like to read it out, yes.
Yes. So it's called Welcome to Holland by somebody called Emily Pearl Kingsley. And what she said is, when you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous holiday to Italy. You buy a bunch of guidebooks and make your wonderful plans, like the Colosseum, seeing Michelangelo, David, the gondolas in Venice. You may learn some handy phrases in Italian. It's all really exciting. And then after months of eager anticipation, the day finally arrives. You pack your bags and off you go. Several hours later, the plane lands. The stewardess comes in and says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland? You say, "What do you mean Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life I've dreamed of going to Italy." But there's been a change in the flight plan. They've landed in Holland and there you must stay. Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, that's beautiful, Joe. That's so
The
beautiful.
important thing is that they haven't taken you to a horrible, disgusting, filthy place full of pestilence, famine, and disease. It's just a different place. So you must go out and buy new guidebooks, and you must learn a whole new language, and you'll meet a whole new group of people that you would never have met before. It's just a different place. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy than Italy. But after you've been there for a while and you catch your breath, you look around and you begin to notice that Holland has got windmills and Holland has got tulips. Holland even has Rembrandts. But everyone you know is busy coming and going from Italy. And for the rest of your life, you will say, "Yes, that's where I was supposed to go. That's what I had planned." But if you spend your life mourning the fact that you didn't get to Italy, you may never be free to enjoy this very special, the very lovely things about Holland.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And yeah, even more beautiful the way that you've read it, and I can just see
Mm.
the emotion behind it. And yeah, it's just beautiful. Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank
It's
you.
been
Thank you.
really educational, but lovely just to connect to you on this level as well. And Yeah, I think I've cemented in my mind from doing this process as well, because I was getting a bit confused sometimes with who's who. So yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to do this
Mhm,
and for taking the time to. 'Cause it's not just telling your story, it's reliving stuff and going back
mhm,
to things that maybe were a bit painful and,
mhm.
certain stuff obviously that won't go into, just for privacy and things like that. Just, you could go into deeper levels of things, but, so yeah, just thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking the time. And for anybody watching this, if you would like to get in touch with Jo, she's kindly offered to be there. If you'd like to reach out, and so I'll share that. It's going to be best is that on your email. And if you wanted to give out your Instagram as well, I'll share that as well with the
Okay, yep,
video.
absolutely.
Um, any closing thoughts, Jo?
Yes, I mean, a couple of things. First of all, people are absolutely welcome to contact me, but also I would highly recommend the National Autistic Society. The web page is full of um, loads of information. You should have a local National Autistic Society support person, and I would definitely recommend contacting them. Um, I would also say that if you have issues with education, then we in Tower Hamlets, we have something called the Parents Advice Centre, and they're an impartial educational support group. And I absolutely believe that in your own council borough that you would have the same thing, but it'd be called something different. So that there are, and I would highly recommend that if you have a child who isn't diagnosed or you just new diagnosis, that you get support straight away, that you join a local support group, speak to other parents. It's your lifeline, honestly, it really is. And last of all, I'd like to say, Tamsin, thank you so much for allowing me to share and to talk and be open and to share with you. Thank you so much
Oh,
for inviting me on. I would absolutely love to come again. And I'm so sorry because there's so many things to talk about. And so I've literally scratched the surface of all of this. But thank you so much for having me.
well, thank you, Jo. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to just connect to my heart and send that invite out. We can just tune into our heart chakra just before we close out. And I'm going to send you lots of love as well, Jo. So we're just going to ground our energy and just take some nice deep breaths. Whatever you're doing, if you're watching this, just how important it is just to take some time out and check in with yourself. Just filling up the lungs. Relax your shoulders. And just send all that peace and the gratitude to your heart. And just thank yourself for getting yourself to where you are today. And namaste. Just sending you lots
Thank
of
you
love, Jo, and everybody
so much,
else
darling.
watching. And next week, I'm going to be joined by a lovely lady called Dianji. Hope I've got that right. And she's a spiritual leader. And yeah, another fascinating bio that I've been sent. So yeah, just really blessed to be doing these. It's a bit of a hobby at the moment, and I'm learning as I go. So, but it's all education and a learning curve. So, thank you, and I've been receiving lovely comments, and the channel's growing. So, yeah, I've just asked for if you are enjoying the content to like, subscribe, share. It all helps with the algorithm. Yeah, thanks, Jo. And yeah, so just thank you. And thank you once more, Jo. So have a beautiful rest of the evening, whatever
Thank
you're
you.
doing. And
Thank you.
we'll speak soon, no doubt. So take care. Thank you.
Okay. See you. Bye bye.